right.
Here we go.
Well, let's hop straight into it because I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot to talk about. For me, this week's episode was way more interesting than last week's episode. So I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I am excited because this was jam packed full of goodness.
Yeah, I just want to be clear and let you guys both know that I do not have a vote tonight. That didn't land. So moving on.
Yeah, it was definitely a more eventful and has a lot kind of going on this week. So I'm ready. I'm excited to dive into it.
This is the rise and fall of the Roman Empire.
Ooh, how fancy!
I'm throwing tomatoes.
We should.
Bad jokes all around.
I was gonna say we should. This entire episode is in Shakespeare format, so just heads up, everyone. Starting now. Oh. Well, let's start. I mean, we're gonna. I feel like we're gonna be all over the place, right? Just getting started this week, but let's talk about tribe dynamics. I don't know about you guys, but I got a sense from the moment the episode started, the way that they were kind of showing Lavo and Rome. I just had a sense right off the bat that they were the ones going to tribal, and I don't know if it was a lucky guess or what, but um, let's start with Lavo and kind of the dynamic there, like before the challenge, before the journey. What did you guys think of their tribe dynamic before, or like kind of as the episode started?
I didn't really know what to think of it because it almost seemed like it was you had obviously a couple good, strong alliances, but Rome was always just kind of the outlier, and it was like, what are you doing? Who are you with? So I felt like everybody was kind of against him because they knew he was out idol hunting and doing all of those things, but he's clearly working with a set of the group, like set of people. So I don't know. It was interesting to see how it played out.
It felt weird because like at the beginning of the episode, it was just kind of like Logan said, Rome was the outcast. He was doing his own thing, but I kind of felt for Rome. He was out there, maybe he's a little bit much, a little arrogant, a little too much sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But like he had like, in my opinion, decent points. Like, I'm out here providing, catching fish. Like, the least you guys could do is start a fire and like get that going. So like, I was kind of like, I kind of see where he's coming from right here.
Yeah, there's definitely points that he makes that are really good, and like you said, come on, I shouldn't have to go out and do all the fish, come back, make a fire, do all of it, cook it, help out some points, but there are definitely he has his moments where I'm like, okay, like calm it down, like pull it back a little bit. You're almost being a little too cocky or too arrogant, and I think he's got to be careful, otherwise he's going to get himself in trouble.
Yeah, for Lavo, for me, it was quite the dynamic as far as like, I mean, we see later in the episode, there's really three pairs. So you have Rome and Genevieve, who seem to be really close, even though we still don't really hear much from Genevieve, but it seems like those two are voting together. And then we have Saul and Asia. And then we have Teeny and Kishan. And I couldn't quite tell if this was just production kind of spinning Rome in a certain light, but he almost seemed like he was completely oblivious to how people were feeling about him. and maybe it was because knowing that he had an idol that is only good for one tribal, that he's like, I can really just do whatever I want, and I don't really have to care what people think of me. Um, but I don't know. And but I'm with you, Brandon. I kind of felt for him, and I kept thinking, man, like I know he's not going home because he has that idol, but just I'm kind of rooting for him in a weird way. And even though he kind of annoyed me for a little bit as well, and he's on, I mean, he's one of the picks that I had on my team, but I don't know. It was an interesting one for me uh, this week with Rome because I didn't really like him that much, but I also felt for him a little bit. It was kind of that whole thing was an interesting dynamic for me.
I think you make a good point about Rome in, you know, just kind of doing what he wants because he knew he was going to play the idol. And I think there might be truth to that because, he's trying to sell, and I know we're maybe getting a little ahead here, but trying to sell the whole I lost my boat thing and not convincingly at all, like just saying it way too many times.
And bringing it up out of like kind of
At,
outside of a
at the
conversation being
challenge,
had. Yeah, that, and
yeah,
then like even just randomly sitting down next to Saul and be like, yeah, I don't have a vote. I kind of know how it's gonna go, and like it was just kind of weird.
hmm yeah. So, but I think maybe the Teeny and Rome relationship is deeper than we realized, and maybe, like you said, Blake, production was trying to spin it a certain way, but after tonight, like I feel like Rome is actually sitting in a pretty good spot.
I think so as well. Yeah, I definitely want to get into tribal a little bit more, and specifically around Teeny because um, there's some thoughts going on there that I'm curious to hear what you guys think about. But before we get to that, let's stick with kind of initial tribe dynamics. But let's hop over to what is it? Gata, the yellow tribe. Um, so we really see, was it Sam and is it Annika
Yes.
Yes,
that
Sam
were
and
like,
Annika, yeah.
or yeah, Annika, because she said Monica without the M. That's right. Um, I mean, if the title of this episode isn't like I'm annoyed, then we're missing something because they did a really, really good job of kind of painting the picture of like, okay, everybody is now, we've now been here for a few days. We're all hungry and we're living with each other 24/7 and everything is annoying us about everybody. And Sam and Annika just did not see eye to eye on any of it. And I don't, it was really funny, like how that all played out. And it didn't end up being a big issue, partly because they didn't win or they didn't lose the immunity challenge, but that was kind of a funny dynamic. But did you do you guys get a kick out of all the things that Sam hasn't eaten?
Yeah, definitely a decent list, but some of it like they were acting super surprised about, like I don't know. Some of it
But
I was like,
an heirloom tomato? What the heck's an heirloom tomato?
Well, it's just
yeah,
like a fancy tomato.
Yeah, but
Well,
she's asking him. Annika's like, she's like, let's talk vegetables, and she started with eggplant. I'm like,
yeah,
why did you lead off with eggplant? Nobody's had an
eggplant,
eggplant.
broccolini. Like I don't even. The only reason I know what broccolini is because I watched MasterChef a few times. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm still not even convinced I know what it is.
isn't it just some sort of fancy broccoli?
I
But
guess
he's
I
had,
don't know.
yeah, but just be clear, Sam's had a raspberry.
Oh, but the craziest things
Some
was
blueberries.
no pineapple and no watermelon. Like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What's his diet? Meat
Meat?
and potatoes kind of guy?
Yeah, I guess.
Or maybe he hasn't had potatoes. I don't know.
Right. We didn't get clarification. So, Who did you guys find yourself siding with on that whole thing? Annika or Sam or Annika? Sorry.
I think for me, Sam. I don't know. If she just seemed like I really don't know why. Like the biggest reasoning. I just feel like she was just almost too sure. I don't know. It would just she kind of rubbed me the wrong way in a sense there. But I think I was more leaning with Sam.
I didn't actually feel strongly one way or the other.
I kind of went back and forth.
Yeah.
I kind of leaned more towards Sam, but then the one time where she was like, where he was chopping that, I don't even know what it was, that string or that rope,
Wire, yeah, rope.
and
Mhm.
she was like, we actually had more luck like sawing at it, and then he did, and it cut right away. I was like, okay, she does know what she's talking about. She's just coming off a little strong, and he's just super annoyed. So I ended up in the same place that you were, Brandon. Like I didn't really have a strong feeling one way or the other, because it seemed to move on pretty quickly, and they seemed to jive pretty well
Yeah. I
after
will
that. But
say I think I think Sam actually like handled that situation pretty well because he could have just like argued. There were like multiple times where she said something and he was just like, okay, and just did it and then moved on. So I think it was like, we're annoyed, but we have to keep the peace and work together.
mhm.
So, yeah.
And I think the biggest thing for me with her was she was just coming off a little strong, and that was kind of what threw me off. But I think they both had their points, like you said, Brandon. Sam did a really good job of not making it a bigger deal than what it really needed to be.
What did you guys think of Andy offering up his shot in the dark to was that Sierra that he offered that up to?
Yeah.
Has anybody ever done that? Like given somebody their shot in the dark?
I don't I don't know, but that's that's just a gesture of trust. Like Sierra
Right.
can't like play his shot in the dark, right? That's all it was.
I think so. Yeah, basically it tells her that hey, I'm not going to play this. So I don't know, from the position Andy was in really the last week and the last 2 weeks, he seemed like he was starting to make moves to gain some favor with the tribe. At least with Sierra, she seemed to be at least open to working with him. Um, so I'll be curious to see how that plays out. And I know we talked about it last episode where it's like depending on how quickly your tribe wins or loses again, you know, things can shift pretty dramatically from episode to episode. And I think we saw that pretty well with Andy, but um pop over to Tuku. Speaking of eating food, did you guys see the clip that came out after last week's episode with Kyle and how like I think he's vegan, possibly?
Yeah.
Did you get Brandon? It sounds like you watched that clip,
Is
Brandon. Logan, did you watch it?
I'm not sure if I caught that one.
the one where he ate meat for the first time or something in forever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I'm shocked that that didn't make the cut because he was talking about how he hasn't harmed or eaten, I think eaten or harmed anything with a heartbeat in like a decade.
Hmm.
And so it showed him like kind of nibbling on some fish or some crab or something there to where kind of this internal struggle where he's like, man, this is really important to me, but I've got to eat something because I'm not going to be strong enough to provide or to make it in this game to win $1 million to provide for my family. But I also like I haven't hurt anything with a heartbeat in 10 years. Like this is I don't know. So I really, really liked Kyle this episode. And I'm curious your thoughts on Kyle, but specifically between Kyle and Sue.
So I thought uh I thought Kyle had a really good episode. He's one of the players that I kind of highlighted. Just he seems to have a really good grasp on like just how Survivor alliances and dynamics work, and he's reading that and understanding like, if I can get Caroline and Sue, then that's I just need to get one of them. If I get one of them, I get both. And he was just making little observations like that are really easy to overlook.
Mhm.
So I think he's going to be a lot smarter player than I thought he's going to be. And for Sue, because there was kind of the beef between Kyle and Sue because Kyle put Sue's name down, and turns out that for me, I'm like, Sue, you're playing way too emotional of a game right now, and that's gonna just end up being terrible for you.
Yeah, obviously he needed to kind of try and mend that relationship there with Sue, but like you said, Brandon, I thought she was almost a little too harsh. Yeah, obviously you don't want somebody voting for you, but just kind of pretty set in her ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I just
But
like the fact that she was like, I just can't move past the fact that he put my name down is like, okay, well, you might as well have not come out here because you knew
Yeah.
your name was going to get written down.
it's gonna happen again. So
It kind of amazes me that 40 several seasons into Survivor that people are still playing with that much emotion, and maybe that just speaks to like how people are wired. But I thought it was really interesting because we don't see, I mean, we see that a lot, but there are some players that are really good at separating the emotions from the gameplay. And she seemed to be all about like, nope, I'm getting him back next tribal council. I'm writing his name down no matter what. I don't care.
Yeah, which
Like, it just seemed weird. I don't know.
Yeah, to me, like she had no reason to feel that way because she got 2 votes from her or cast against her last week, and one of the people that voted for her is no longer in the game. So she has no reason to have beef with Kyle because she's, she may not be the leader, but she's in the majority.
Mm-hmm. And I think if she would have had a conversation with Kyle, he could have very easily said, I was left out. I didn't know. I mean, he even said at one point,
He
I
said
didn't
it to
really know
Tiana.
how
Yeah.
I didn't know how things were going to shake up. So I just voted how he was voting. Like I didn't know. And like, wow, you're playing awfully emotionally and like going after him for no reason. Like I don't know. I think you're going to be blinded by some rage there for no benefit to you, but who knows? What did you think of Kyle pitching everybody else against Gabe?
I don't think it's a bad move. Gabe clearly has found an idol. He obviously played it, but it's one that he's playing the game. And so getting him out where some people haven't wanted to work with him because he was looking for the idol and some of those things. I think he's played the game pretty decent so far, so I don't think it's necessarily a bad move, but I don't know if I just don't know if it's too early.
Oh. Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to talk about the journey or the challenge?
With the journey, let's do the journey. Just I think that was first.
Okay.
I know we don't really care, but
Yeah, let's do it. So, who are the 3 people that went on the journey?
it was Rome, Asia, and
Kyle.
Kyle. Yep.
It wasn't Asia, it was Annika,
Wait.
right?
No, you're
Yeah.
right. Wait.
You're right.
What? Yeah. Not okay. Somebody else say it. Rome, Annika, Kyle.
That's right. Yeah.
Of course it was right. That's what I said every time.
Yeah, duh.
I think the only person that said it right the entire time was me.
Yeah, well, your winner pick got voted out tonight, so nobody cares.
Ooh, burn.
Hey.
Okay, Logan, you want to take us through like what the options were at the journey? Like, what did they have to do, and then we'll hop into the dynamic between the three of those, the three of the people that went on the journey and what they all talked about. But what did they actually do? What did they win? What did they risk? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So remind me if I'm wrong, but they all showed up there and there was like a sign or a table that said each pick a path and go your separate ways. So going down the path, they get to the table, there's some instructions there, and on that there's 3 notes in a bag, and you have to put your hand in, pick out one. Whatever you get, you have some options. If you put your hand in and you pick the advantage, then you got whatever that advantage was. If you put your hand in and picked out and it said lose your vote, this is where you had a couple different options. You can stay with just losing your vote for one tribal council, or you could reach your hand in again and try and get the advantage. But if you picked out the other lose your vote, then you lost your vote for 2 tribal councils and didn't get anything. So it was some risk versus reward, obviously, just depending on what happened there. So, and I guess to say the advantage that was there was steal a vote. So
And you had to play, right?
you did have to play.
You had to draw at least one. So Kyle drew, he lost his vote. It sounded like he did not risk it and go for the second pick. He just settled for losing his vote at the next tribal. Annika picked, she lost her vote and decided not to risk it again. And so she just kept with losing her vote for one tribal as well. And Rome, of course, Rome got the advantage right off the bat. So he got a steal a vote. And whoever he stole a vote from didn't get to vote themselves. So it wasn't an extra vote, it was a steal a vote. So you could pick somebody to steal the vote from and vote for them. I was kind of surprised that Kyle and Annika didn't risk it and go for more. But I realized partway through the episode that they have clearly seen the last episode with Q, because a couple of like Q was mentioned a couple times and just like, oh, I don't want to go home with an idol in my pocket, or I don't know, just different things like that. So they seem more what's the word I'm looking for, like cautious about taking risks than I feel like we've seen last season. I was Did you guys think that, I mean, I guess, would you have risked it, or would you have just kept with losing your vote for one tribal, or like I'm curious your guys' thought process on all of that.
I think it depends where you stand with your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's like a just kind of cop out answer, but I think that that's like a lot of the times when you're in a scenario like that, it solely depends on what your situation is.
Yeah, definitely situation there, but for me, I think I would have a hard time risking if, say, I lost my vote. Yes, at that point, I know it's a 50-50 shot, but in the game of Survivor, not having sitting at tribal council and not being able to do anything, being helpless at probably one of the scariest moments in Survivor of being an option to be voted out. Even if you have numbers and the alliance there, I think the less amount of time that you're in that situation, the better. So to risk your vote and possibly have 2 tribal councils, don't know when those will be. If you keep winning, like it's just too much up in the air for me to do it. I feel like.
Yeah, I'm risking it. I feel like I'm risking it every time, because yes, it's 50-50 at that point, but that's really a 66% chance that you get it.
Yeah, and I guess the other piece of it is they didn't know what the advantage was going to be, correct?
That's true. That's true.
So they don't know it's going to be a steal a vote.
I
What
guess that's true because if you knew it was going to be steal a vote, then it's like, okay, I lost it once. If I get it back, I still can't vote in this tribal, but I can steal somebody else's vote and vote for them. So I basically have my vote back, essentially, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like I'm risking it. The question that I'm not sure that I think would depend on where I was at in my tribe would be, am I honest when I get back, or do I lie about it? So I know Kyle, he was completely honest with everything. Annika lied to Andy, but ended up, or she lied to everybody and then ended up telling everybody except for Andy what actually happened. And then Rome seemed to lie to everybody. Didn't tell anybody that he couldn't vote until afterwards, and then he told the people that he was closest to, and that's kind of where we saw Rome's alliances come into play. But I mean, is that the answer for you guys, that it would just depend on where you're at with your tribe, or do you know do you be honest, do you lie about it? Like, what do you guys think on that?
Again, I think kind of depends on where you're at in the tribe. This one I think is a little bit more, I don't know, I guess you could say black and white. I think if you're on the down and you are clearly at the bottom and you go on that and get the reward or whatever, I would most likely try and downplay that and not be honest. I mean, I know some people use that as a deterrent, but I also think that's just kind of prolonging and just, hey, and if you don't tell them, hey, tell them the truth, and if you have an idol or whatever the case may be, you can use that into your advantage to pull a different move and make a bigger gameplay. So I think I'd probably play it closer to my chest.
I feel like I'd just tell the truth.
Even if you got the advantage and you could steal a vote?
Yeah. And it might just be a me thing. I don't know how good I'd be at like lying about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that people would, you know, like with Rome, I'd probably be able to see right through me. So that's just a me thing.
Yeah. I think it's a valid point, and I don't know. I, maybe I think I could lie better than I actually could, but I don't know. This is what is interesting to me about Survivor, is because it's not just black and white on like, oh, I have these advantages and I'm going to keep them to myself. You can't win the game by yourself. You have to have people voting with you. I mean, you're just, even if you have all the idols in the world, at some point you're going to end up in a tribal where you're on the bottom and you don't have an idol. So using some sort of an advantage to build trust with somebody and give information, I mean, that's really the only way that you can show somebody, hey, I trust you because I am being honest with you, and having proof to back that up. I don't know. I that's what's so cool to me about Survivor is, and I really picked up on that this episode, that like, man, I think I could do this, but I don't know that I actually could, because like I'm self aware enough to know, like, man, when I get hungry or I sleep like crap, like I'm gonna be crabby and not thinking straight. Like, some of these people, I'm like, why in the world would you do that? And then you realize, oh, okay, that's why. Like, I don't know. It's really easy to sit there on the couch and think, oh, I would totally do it different, or I would absolutely do it that way. And I just don't know that I don't know. I definitely need to apply to the show because I'm very curious how I would end up doing.
Yeah, that's sitting on the couch and saying what you're gonna do. Like you said, being hungry. I I think just the mental toll. When you're out there, there's not a ton of time for you to have an off switch. So your brain is going 100% of the time. You're not sleeping great. I definitely think it'd be a lot harder than we all expect. And it, I look at even the challenges like, man, I'd love to try that. And they even kind of talked about that tonight. Like, who here think this looks more daunting and scarier than when you're sitting at home? And I would say 90% of the people raise their hand. Like, we don't realize what it is or what it's like just sitting here, and there's definitely a respect factor there for people that go out and do it.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's a great transition because that is we got a sense this week of a couple things that I've been wanting to hear. Um, and when Jeff asked that from everybody, like, "Man, we're out in the middle of the ocean. Like it's not just shallow. You can't touch the bottom. It's very deep. These structures are very tall. Like who here is overwhelmed or feels a little uncomfortable? I forget how he exactly asked that, but was it Kashan um, that said he couldn't even swim 4 months ago? Like he took swimming lessons and like, man, that is crazy to me. I can't imagine going on Survivor and not knowing how to swim 4 months prior and being out in the ocean. I don't know. You start to see that these people aren't just famous actors and like they're actually overwhelmed and they're stressed, and this is like way outside of their comfort zone. It was kind of a cool moment to see everybody, pretty much everybody, raise their hand.
Mm-hmm. And with Kishan, I think really cool on his part to have that mentality of not wanting to sit out because he wasn't sure on it. Like, trust in myself, trust in my training, and like the things that I've practiced to get me through that, and we'll go from there. But to have that mindset and just obviously a challenge and something like that, but just for the game in general, I think is really cool.
Yeah. And do you guys remember talking last episode about wanting to hear some of the strategy talk? I feel like somebody from Survivor Production is listening to our podcast because this is the first time that I remember ever seeing that much strategy talk before the challenge took place.
Yeah,
Did-
I don't know. I feel like this challenge seemed almost later in the episode than normal, so I feel like they got a lot of that out on the like just kind of the talk like tribe dynamics and stuff like that on the front end. I don't know. I just feel like it maybe have been a little bit later, but I could be wrong.
Well, I just mean like during like when
Like
they started
right
the
before the
challenge,
challenge.
like right before
Oh,
they kind of cut to each tribe, and Rome was like, no, I've got to do this first. I can jump to the buoy, I can do this. And Saul was like, hold on a second, like chill for a second. And he's like,
mm-hmm.
no, I know I can do it. And then it cut to Andy, and he was like, no, just hear me out, guys. Like, let's do it this way. Um and I forget the other tribe on how that all laid out, but I don't know. You just got a sense of how those conversations happen more than I ever remember before, and I really liked seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have good ideas on this podcast.
It's true.
I Speaking of them like kind of talking up and like, oh, I want to do it. Anytime somebody speaks up like that and says, I can do it, I want to do it, you better hope and pray that you actually can and do it the way you say, because that is a pretty quick ticket if you fail or struggle. And there in the challenge, I was a little worried for Andy.
Yeah, his arch nemesis was the balance beam, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was like Brandon Dolan versus a ladder in Survivor 45.
Yeah, it But yeah, anytime you step up like that, you've gotta fulfill your promises there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily want Lavo to lose this week and go to tribal, but I was happy to see that hey, it's not the same tribe every single time.
That was
It
actually for
seems
me
really balanced.
exactly. Yeah, that was my takeaway. Was like, wow, 3 episodes, 3 different tribes have gone to
Mhm.
tribal. So I don't know the last time that that's happened.
Oof, that's a good question.
That is true because the last several seasons it feels like it was all one tribe that really just lost consistently,
Yeah.
at least for the most part. So
Yeah, everybody has torches. It's not going to be merged before somebody's getting the, tribal council spiel from Jeff. It's good, and there's no tribe that feels like, wow, this tribe's a disaster and this is miserable to watch. So, nice change of pace.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so this challenge, I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but it was immunity and reward. Reward was comfort, and it was a tarp and 2 hammocks if you were team number one. Team number two just got a smaller tarp, no hammocks. Um, and then we briefly talked about it, but Andy kind of started off real slow, but they ended up Yellow or Gata ended up coming back and doing really well. Um, did they end up getting first?
Yeah, they did.
Did, yeah. So man, everybody else picked up really, really good because Andy was not looking hot at first. But so they got first, and then Tuku got second, and Jeff called that challenge so early. He even said, "I'm calling it now." Well, Lavo's going to tribal. Like, I don't think anybody had finished the puzzle just yet, but
Yeah.
he knew it.
I mean, yeah, Lavo, like they didn't really have any part of their puzzle up when he said that, did they?
No.
I don't think I mean maybe a couple base pieces, but it wasn't anything worthwhile.
Who was doing the puzzle? Do you guys remember?
For Lavo?
Yeah.
I think Asia and I don't actually know who the other one was.
Was it Teeny or Genevieve?
It was was it Teeny? Because
Oh,
Genevieve set out.
that's right. That's right. Because she was looking for the idol underneath her bench or some
Yeah.
sort of clue.
Yeah, the first time we heard her talk in the entire season.
Right. So it had to have been. It was definitely Asia. And
then it was Teeny.
was it Teeny? Okay. Rome seemed like he was. He knew everything about everything on that puzzle, but
Yeah, that's where I kind of said earlier, like he almost taking the stance of like, because whenever he was talking about at the very beginning of like, I can do all of this, let me do it, I'm gonna be mad if we struggle, like calm down a little bit. And whenever you're already struggling at a puzzle, somebody standing over you or telling you, yes, obviously they're trying to help, but it almost makes it more stressful and you can't focus on what you're doing. And I don't know, you just calm down a little bit.
yeah. The puzzles seemed like the weakest part of their challenge. Were you guys
Mhm.
surprised at all that there wasn't any talk about, hey, they really stunk it up on the puzzle? Maybe we should get rid of one of them. Like that didn't seem to be a conversation at all. It was all based on alliances.
Yeah, I I found that interesting as well, where like it it was, hey, we don't have anything against you. It's just you're not in our group, basically, was the reasoning. So yeah, I'm surprised. And again, like that just goes to show that like people don't really put that much weight into challenge performances.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's the way it should be to a point. I think there's something to say, I mean, about consistently struggling and not doing anything in challenges, but I feel like for the most part, people have their moments and all shine in certain areas. So basing your vote off for somebody having a rough go at a puzzle or a challenge or whatever the case may be that day, I feel like is a little harsh.
Do you think that changes if they split up immunity and reward challenges? Do you think there's more emphasis put on it when it's just immunity as opposed to immunity and reward? Or do you think there's less emphasis, or does it matter at all?
I actually think maybe if they split the challenges, I think maybe there'd be more emphasis if, like, for example, like Lavo loses reward and immunity, and it's like somehow Asia's the one that just, is the, quote unquote reason that they didn't win, then it would be like, okay, you have kept us from winning 2 challenges now. But no, I think it's clear that, like, this new era, and even, pre-season 40, like, it's just all about the relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that.
Do we want to dive into tribal, or is there anything else after?
Let's before we get to tribal, because this may kind of go into some of that. One, I don't know if we talked about it. Is Rome the best fisher in Survivor history?
According to him, probably.
I don't know.
Question mark?
I mean, almost guaranteed. Um, I don't know if there's a way to calculate it, or I'm sure there's answers somewhere. Do you guys remember? You guys have watched all the seasons since I have. Who's the best fisher that you remember? Because was it
Ozzy.
Ozzy?
Ozzy is the, like, freaking Aquaman from what I can remember.
Yeah, Ozzy. The season that he was on, the first season he was on was.
Oh, Joe. Sorry, Logan.
No, you're good.
I got excited.
Joe Mama.
He's just unbelievable in the water. The other person that sticks out is Rupert. He was pretty heavy fisherman and always getting food. Something there, but yeah, I feel like Ozzy and Rupert were the first two that came to my mind. But
Rupert, Ozzy, and Joe.
Yeah.
Joe's like new and improved Ozzy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
sorry, go ahead.
They actually got sizable fish as well. So
yeah, when you revealed that fish, I didn't even notice it at first. I was like, "What's he doing? What are we excited
part
about?"
Of a fish. Well, and then the fact that he what did he catch? 4 fish, and he ate 2 of them himself. I'm like,
yeah,
hey, good on you, because hey, that's a way to show the tribe that, man, I'm doing all of this fine, but that's a bold move. You would just eat half the fish yourself. But yeah, as far as Rome goes, man, he's already said it's Survivor Rome. That's not Survivor season 47. It's Survivor Rome. So
he's confident.
he is. No, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I don't know. It'd be fun to poll, like, all the contestants of Survivor ever and who they think the best, like, fisher or provider for the tribe ever was. So, okay, let's hop into tribal, and I think that's gonna, like, merge really well into, like, best players, worst players, and then at the end we'll talk about our Survivor of the week. So, what do you guys think of tribal this week?
I mean,
And we don't necessarily have to start at tribal. I mean, it can be after the challenge and kind of like the lead up to tribal too.
yeah. It was Asia and Saul, right? Those were
Mhm.
kind of the names being floated around.
Correct.
Like it felt obvious. Like as soon as Teeny was talking about, I'm clearly in with Rome at this point, and I want to work with Genevieve, and Kashan's my number one. It was, it was Asia and Saul, and Teeny was basically just trying to make Asia feel comfortable, and which was like weird because you have the power, and unless like Asia had like relationships that we didn't know about, like she could have just not even talked to Asia if she wanted to.
It almost seemed like Teeny and Kashan were wanting to work with Asia at first. And so they had pitched Saul, and then Asia didn't want anything to do with it. So
Yeah.
they were like, ooh, well, maybe not. We were hoping to bring you in on this, but now we don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was my thing. I think Asia would still be here, and it would have been Saul going home if she was more receptive to that and went along with it. The moment that she questioned it or tried to throw somebody else out there, do something else, they knew, okay, she's
Which
not with us.
for somebody like, I know like having a Survivor podcast is not the same as playing Survivor, but she she does a Survivor podcast as well.
Right.
And I feel like she should have been able to pick up, like, I should just go with what they say so I can survive in advance.
Yeah, and I guess that even speaks to or talks about what it's like playing versus watching, because Teeny even stated whenever they first started out was, I'm a fan of your podcast. I want to work with her because she always catches different points of views and stuff that I didn't pick up on, and that's something that she missed. So like that also talks to everything going on in the game, that you do miss some things, but yeah, if she would have gone along with it, I think she would still be in the game.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line of just blindly going along with it and saying, "Yeah, absolutely, I'll do whatever it takes." And then it's like, do we really want to just carry somebody along with us? Um, like, are they just telling me that kind of thing? But like, push back a little bit if they're not like, I don't know. Okay, then fold and move on and like go with the majority. And it just didn't seem like she was willing to do that. And I really liked her. I mean, Asia was playing really well. Like she seemed super aware, like hyper aware of things, but just the numbers didn't fall in her favor, and I don't think she was good enough to overcome that. But I don't know. I'm really curious to see where Saul ends up landing, because those were like three duos. It was like Teeny and Kashan, Rome and Genevieve, and then Saul and Asia. But were you surprised that Saul picked up on what Rome was telling him, or was Rome overselling it when he was like, "Hey, I don't have a vote, so it's gonna be Asia"?
I think Rome was way overselling it. I think they picked up on it when he was talking about it at the challenge, when they were
Yeah,
leaving the challenge. But I mean, Saul even said it. He's like, Rome thinks I'm an idiot,
yeah.
or is talking to me like I'm an idiot, and is just telling me this. And what do you say? He's either just doing this or he's the best Survivor player ever. Yeah. So
And jury's still out.
yeah,
So
No, he wasn't fooling anybody. I don't even think he was fooling himself.
no, definitely not. You could
I don't
see
know.
as soon as Saul called him out on that, he's like, no, no, no. I mean, why would why would I
Yeah.
do that? I would never do that. I
Yeah, that was
like I
terrible.
don't have any reason. Like
I
it
don't know.
was
Yeah, it was
yeah,
awful.
yeah, did not look good for Rome. So I'll be really curious to see if they end up losing next episode. And going back to tribal, how Rome fares, because he was sitting really, really well this week because of that idol.
Mm.
And he's still sitting decent with the steal the vote, but man, it just doesn't seem like people love him. And to me, Teeny almost seemed like she wanted to go with Rome because of his advantages.
Yeah.
And she said that a couple times. She's like, I feel like I have to go that direction because that's where the strength is. And then Teeny was the interesting one for me this tribal, and I feel like I'm talking a lot on this, but she where she's like, I feel like I need to go with Rome. And then she talked about needing to draw lines in the sand, and she wasn't quite ready to do that. And I feel like she left tribal without drawing lines in the sand, and I think that's going to come back to bite Teeny, because Asia voted for Genevieve, Saul voted for Rome, and Teeny voted for Saul. Everybody else voted for Asia. And it almost seemed like Teeny voted for Saul just so she didn't have to vote for Asia, in the off chance that it went a different direction, so she could say, hey, I didn't vote for you. It's like she almost wasn't ready to draw that line in the sand.
Yeah.
And I'm
Well,
really curious to see if people pick up on that, or if that's going to come back to bite her in her relationship with Saul. I don't know. That whole thing was just really interesting
yeah.
to me.
I wonder if because right before the vote when Asia was like, I have one more thing to say, and I don't remember exactly what she said,
Yep.
but it was like basically like I don't even remember what she said, but whatever she said clearly impacted Teeny and made Teeny think, and I think change her vote.
It was something along the lines of like, I hope whoever said they were going to vote a certain direction, like,
Yeah,
does what they said they were going to do, or something along those lines. And I picked up on that too, because I thought, okay, she's speaking to somebody, and Teeny folded. So I don't know. I'll be curious.
Oh,
I think I was just gonna say I think Teeny is very strategic and is being cautious, obviously, to not make the wrong move, but might be getting in her own way. Could be getting in her own way a bit.
No, I agree. What were you going to say, Brandon?
oh, I was just recalling. This is not even relevant to tribal. It's about Gabe and how he played his idol last tribal, and we thought maybe there's going to be some huge meaning behind it that he was going to tell us. And I was disappointed in him this week
Yeah.
because it was just like I just felt like I needed to play it, so I played it.
Yeah,
Like,
that's where I was saying earlier. It feels like this season people are very risk adverse, meaning like they're not willing to take the risks that people were last season. I mean, every single person went home with an idol in their pocket last season, or dang near it. And then the fact that you have people that aren't willing to risk um like getting the beware advantage for an additional couple tribal councils, settling for only one, to in that the journey, not risking it, to I don't know, just little things like that. It seems like everybody is way more timid, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't hate how everybody's playing it, but I'm with you. I was a little disappointed that there wasn't more to his reasoning for playing that.
My thought process on his reasoning, and I don't think this was ever said or anything, but he was fairly clearly painted at the beginning. Like he was out looking for the idol, and so if it got out, and that's what people were talking about, if he didn't want to be labeled as having that, and just like getting rid of it, so he didn't have that label and maybe didn't have that target on him anymore. That's my only thought on it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I almost hope. I almost hope that Tuku loses next week just to see how they end up. Like, I don't know, just how their dynamic is, because that whole tribe dynamic is very interesting to me, between Sue and then Gabe and Kyle. And I don't know. I think that could be a really interesting tribal. So I'm kind of hoping that that's the direction it goes next week. But let's talk best players, worst players, kind of where people are moving their stock up and down, and then we'll hop into Survivor of the Week.
I like it.
I think stock up for me, Kyle.
Yep.
Like last week, I thought, okay, this dude's on the outs. He hasn't really, we haven't seen him do anything. He was on the wrong side of a vote. How is he going to crawl out of that hole? And just kind of seeing how he navigated his tribe and, was trying to mend relationships, whether he did that successfully or not, he's clearly trying to make moves in order to move forward in the game. Now, obviously, we won't know until, if and when Tuku goes back to tribal. But I think he's at least planted some seeds and set up a good foundation for him to have a pretty decent run in the game if everything that he did works.
100%. Yeah, he was one of my top ones as far as moving his stock up this week.
And before you go, Logan, I honorable mention Genevieve stock up just because she said words this week.
Yeah, I definitely didn't know she was even in the game until this week. I kept thinking, like, wait, who was that? Did she have any input in last episode?
I don't think we've heard her say a word.
Yeah.
Until this week.
But I will say her smile is insane. It might be the widest smile I've ever seen, like wise. Pay attention to that next week because you'll notice it. And yeah, she seems super smart, but she's laying super low.
For me, I guess you could say Rome stock up, with finding getting the advantage of steal a vote. I know he used his idol, but I think having that the other piece of stealing a vote and what you can do with that, I think is pretty big. So just that and the trust that built with the people that he has, I'd go stock up with him.
Yeah, Rome was an interesting one for me because in some ways he definitely increased his stock. In other ways, definitely lowered it. He seems very much on the outs and people seem very annoyed by him. But if he keeps positioning himself with these advantages, it could potentially not matter how people think of him.
Mm-hmm.
If he continues to set himself up that way. So yeah, a little bit up for me, a little bit down for me. The other one that I thought, increased their stock a little bit was Andy. And I know he struggled in the challenge, but the way he kind of talked about, hey, I realize I'm on the bottom. I'm self-aware enough to realize that. I'm going to sit back and take in some information, start paying attention to the kind of the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the bickering between Sam and Annika, and just like I'm starting to notice some cracks. And he seemed to like, okay, still maybe on the bottom, but I'm gonna start positioning myself a little better. Still smiles a little creepy and like twirling his hair in the background, but he seems to be a little more self-aware than I may have given him credit for last episode. So I'll be curious to see how his stock changes next week and the next couple weeks. But what about people lowering their position? I don't know about you guys, but I don't know that anybody really like said, "Oh yeah, they're in a much worse off position." For me, other than Sue, and she's
Yeah.
not necessarily in a worse position. I'm just not necessarily as big of a fan of her this week now. She seemed to kind of drop a little bit, but other than that, I didn't really have anybody.
She's definitely who I thought she was going to be going into this game versus who she is in the game is, two completely different people. But it's hard. We really only saw like that brief interaction between her and Kyle, so it is hard to say like, her stock really went down because she could next week or 2 weeks down the road be like, oh yeah, Kyle, we're cool. Like, let's work together, and it could have
Yeah.
just been an in the moment thing. So yeah, it's hard to really put too much weight on that, but I think it's definitely something to watch.
Yeah. Well, and her relationship with Caroline or Carolyn, I don't know if it's
Heard
Caroline or
it said
Carolyn, but
both ways actually. So
right. Yeah, I'm still confused on it, but their relationship seems solid, and I'll be really. I'm excited to see that relationship tested a little bit, which is kind of why I'm hoping that tribe loses, just to see if they stick together. Because I don't hate that dynamic there. I prefer Caroline. She's my winner pick, but I don't know that's an interesting couple that I'll be curious to see if it stands the test of time. But yeah, I'm with you on that.
What are your thoughts on Teeny?
so I think it's gonna have to be a wait and see.
Okay.
But there's concerns that I have with her, even dating back to last week, the way that she um showed Kashan, Rome's idol.
Mm, I forgot about that.
And of course that idol's gone now, so it doesn't really matter. But just I'll be curious if she, people tally the votes and are like, wait a second, there were only 3 votes for Asia. There should have been 4. I'll be curious if that gets brought up or not.
Yeah.
But what could happen, and I guess Rome could come clean, even though people already know, like Rome could be like, I didn't have a vote. So, but I guess they read 6 votes, didn't they?
Yeah, they
So,
read all votes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That wouldn't work. But yeah, I'd be curious if that comes up. I don't think it will, though, because I think it'll be like a, hey, I was kind of unsure. I know we talked about it, but there's a part of me that just felt like I needed to vote this way. And, I'll be interested to see how she sells that.
Honestly, even saying like, hey, I wasn't sure how the votes were going to land, so I decided to split the vote just in case it ended up being a tie,
Mm-hmm.
didn't trust Rome or whatever. But I think she could overcome that. I don't know. I forgot about that moment last week where she showed Kashan Rome's idol in that location. So she's definitely had moments each episode that I'm like, oh, I just don't know how I feel about you. But I found myself this episode liking her more than ever before. And I think she's definitely trending in the right direction. A lot of potential downside, but I really, really like her way more than I expected to, honestly.
Yeah, her personality and the way she thinks about the game and all is really cool to see. So,
Mhm. All right. Well, Survivor of the Week. and then I've got one other thing before we sign off.
All right. Well,
Do you guys have a survivor of the week?
so I will say there wasn't like any like wow, that blew me away type of move this week. But I'm gonna just stick with where I was earlier with kind of our, who's trending up, who's trending down, and go with Kyle, just because it was nice to see. Yeah, and I know that like we don't get to see everything. That obviously Kyle wasn't just sitting there saying nothing for 5 days. We just didn't get to see it, but it was nice to see him. Like, oh, he does know the game and he is playing, and he understands the severity of his situation that he's in, and he's making the right moves. At least I think to better his position in his tribe.
Mm-hmm. Whether it works out for him or not, he's definitely playing the game. Absolutely.
What about you, Blake?
Ooh, mine's gonna be controversial. So, um, I was gonna joke and say Genevieve because she hasn't done anything until this week.
Legend.
But I'm gonna go with Rome. I mean, he was a highlight from the opening scenes of this episode to the very end. And while I don't love how he did it, he's got it. He had an idol and he has a steal a vote. I don't I don't like his methods necessarily, but he is positioning himself very, very well. And I'll be really curious now that the idol is back in play. I mean, it sounds like he's going out hunting for it again. I mean, he already said, I'm out there that night. And I doubt that's actually going to happen, but um, I don't know. People seem to want to work with him, even though they seem to be annoyed by him. And that's not necessarily a bad position to be in. So, as far as like, standout person this week, he's got to be my pick.
I like it. I was kind of between two people, and one of them was just kind of nice to see that person get something going for him, and that was kind of I was thinking of as Andy. Had a decent episode. Like I said, something kind of going his way, but was going to go with Rome as well. He, from getting the advantage to having the idol, like you said, he's just in a good place and has gotten there pretty quick and is playing the game fairly well. And I don't know how big of a fan I am of him. I think he's a little like, I don't know, cocky and like sure, but he's definitely playing it well. So I was going to go with Rome.
I like it. Well, last thing I have before we kind of get off of here, winner picks. Brandon, you voted for Teeny, or you picked Teeny to win. I picked Caroline. Logan, you unfortunately picked Asia. And since she was voted out this week, you've got to pick somebody else. So currently, Brandon picked somebody on his team. I picked somebody on my team. You had somebody on your team, but floor's open. You pick whoever you want, but pressure is on.
Yeah, I was really hoping I wouldn't have to do this as soon because, oof.
It is really early.
Oh my goodness. I think I'm gonna go with Gabe.
Ooh. Bold pick. You want to give us any insight? Why do you think Gabe?
I don't know. I think he's clearly a decently smart player in the game, and knows what he's doing, what he's looking for, finding the idol already. I think he's aware enough to know that it's going to be out there again. So I'd be surprised. I'd be curious to see if he goes out and does that. Find if he can find it again and keep it to himself like he wanted to before.
Why would it be out there again?
Because he played it.
Oh, that's true. I forgot he played it. Dang it.
Yeah.
Right.
So he played it. So
Good call.
I would assume he knows that it's going to go back out and play. So I don't know. I just trying to think outside of the box and keep into my team, and kind of landed with him.
I like it.
Probably is not going to work out though. So see you back in 2 weeks.
No, I like it. I like it. Well, do you guys have anything else?
Nope.
I think that's it.
Okay. Well, this week was way more enjoyable to me than last week. Last week was great as well, but this one was a lot of fun, and I think it's setting the tone for this season. So definitely curious to see where the next several episodes go, and I think it's going to be one of the better seasons in the modern era, in my opinion. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. Brandon, where can everybody find us? What's our handle, our hashtag, whatever?
What? You sound like a grandpa there.
I mean, I am the oldest one here, so
You can find us on social media at Merge Feast Pod on X, Twitter, and youtube.com/at Merge Feast Pod.
I like it. I like it. Awesome. All right. Logan, go ahead and say goodbye.
Goodbye, Logan.